Welcome back. My name is Homai, and in this video we are going to go over the Music Theory 1 graded homework assignment number 2. So we're going to talk about how to do this, how to solve for these. So if you are still confused about meter, make sure to watch my simple and compound meter basics 1 video. And let's take a look here. So in this first section it says fill in the blanks. It gives us some information, and we have to determine the rest of the information based on the given information. So let's take a look at the pieces of information that are provided to us. We have the meter type. We have the beat note, the division of the beat, and the time signature. Okay. So remember that the top number is always going to define the meter type, and vice versa. The meter type will always define the top number. So this first piece of information, the top number and these are always going to be aligned. All right? Always. So you're going to notice that they always have to give us at least one of those. Okay, this is just 2/2 time. Okay. So that's where you're going to get that piece of information. All right. So very simple. Compound quadruple, well, that's going to be 12, right? Because 12 divided 3 is 4. Simple triple, you can figure that out. That's how it goes. Now, next piece of information. I'll do this in red. Okay. When you're in compound time, the lower number is going to be the division of the beat. If you're in simple time, the lower number is going to be the beat note. So this is simple time. This is compound time. Simple time. And compound time. Okay. Notice that already completes most of the information for ourselves. Lastly, the beat note and division are completely related. So if you have one, you also have the other. You can determine the other. Obviously, it matters whether you are in compound or simple time. Okay, but basically you're just adding the division of the beats together to form your beat note. Okay, so let's do a little bit of this together. So we did one of the top numbers of the time signature. Let's finish example number 1. It's compound time, so the lower number is going to be the division of the beat, the subdivision, which in this case is an 8th note, so we're going to have 12/8 time. We add the 3/8 together, which gives us a dotted quarter. Okay, so just go through, and that's how you're going to do the rest of these. Let's take a look at the next section. Provide the best time signature for the following notes. Okay, so this is a little bit trickier, but there are a few clues that you need to look for. The number 1 clue you're going to look for is the beaming of the notes. Because what you want to do is you want to count up the groups. So if I take a look here, notice that these notes are beamed together, these notes are beamed together. See that? So I'm just looking how it's beamed together. And then I'm going to actually count up the beats by counting it out. If I count 1, E, and okay, you can see that this is really 4/16. Okay, you can think of this like this: 4/16, because the dotted 8th is 3/16. Then you have a quarter. And notice how I'm actually writing out all the subdivisions, because it can help us see the groups better. Notice 4/16 equals a quarter. So really, what's happening here is this: quarter, quarter, quarter. What time signature would have 3/4. Well, that's pretty easy. That would have to be 3/4 time, 3/4 notes per measure. So there's a process in which you need to analyze these, the beaming of it, the grouping of the notes, do some math to figure out what's being represented, and then complete the rest. Let's take on another one. So let's say, I'll erase this so it's not confusing at all. Let's take number 5, for example. Okay? This is beamed together. Right? That's a big clue already. Whenever you see dotted notes and you see 3 notes beamed together of the same note values, it's a pretty big clue that you are probably in compound time, since the beats are being divided in 3s. And even a dotted eighth is divided in 3, right? Because another way of writing this, dotted eighth is 3/16. Dotted eighth is 3/16. And then, of course, we have our written out 3/16 here. Now we can see there are 3 groups of 3/16 each. Compound time for sure. And if we count those up, what do we have? We have 9/16. Okay? So that's how you do that. Let's take another one, for example, because I know this can be a little tricky for some people. Look at number 6. Just keep changing colors for fun. We have 4 30-second notes beamed together. This is being treated as one beat group. And you have another beat group right here, 2/16. Well, guess what? Those are equal. But they're beamed together, which means that the beat group is actually larger. The beat unit's actually larger. So 2/16 is actually 1/8. 4 30-seconds, also 1/8. I think you can figure out the rest. Take a look at example 10. This one might look a little tricky, but look at the way they're grouped again. You've got these, this, and this. So we have 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 beats represented. But if we were to divide this up again, 2/8 is 2/16. This is another 16th. They're beamed together. These are beamed together. Dotted eighth is also worth 3/16. And now suddenly we can see the picture coming together. We have 12/16 notes here. Let's take a look at the next example. Okay? A bit of an unusual time signature. But notice this entire grouping is beamed together. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6/8 there. Well, that doesn't add up because, 6/8, well, aren't we dividing, if it's compound time, which it's implying, then shouldn't we be dividing into 3s? Yes, we should. But what can we do to solve this? You can combine these 6 into 3/4. You see? Dotted half is also 3/4. And now you can see that you have 6/4. Lastly, this one looks a little tricky. But again, we follow the same steps. How is it beamed? Okay, you have a little clue here. Notice that this 16th is not connected to anything else. Okay? Let's give you an example. What if this was beamed like this? Because it certainly could have been. Okay? Like this. Right? Same note values. This would be a completely different time signature. In this case here, we're dealing with a 16th. These combine into a 16th. And guess what? An eighth can be represented by 2/16. We have 4/16 here. But if it was beamed like this, now this is an eighth, and this combines into an eighth. You have 2/8. See the difference? 4/16, 2/8. And yet, it's the same type of notes in each measure. So beaming is everything when it comes to determining the time signature based on the written notation. Okay, so these can be a little tricky. Let's take a look at this final example here. Each of the following fragments is notated so that the placement of the beats is obscured in some fashion. Without changing the way the music will sound, rewrite each one to clarify the beat placement. This may involve breaking some of the long notes into tied shorter notes or rebeaming groups of notes. So this is a little bit, you have to understand a few more things. So one of the things I showed you already up here is that you want to beam beats together. Okay, when you look at a piece of music, you want to be able to see the time signature without even seeing the time signature. So let me show you what I mean. Let's take maybe a piece of music, for example. I'll just let's just find a random piece of music here to use as an example. All right, here's an example. All right. So if we were to ignore the time signature, let's say the time signature wasn't written here at all. Okay. We should still be able to see the time signature just by looking at the music, and we can. Take a look. Quarter, quarter, beam together, quarter, quarter. That's 4 quarters to measure. Okay. So we want to be able to visualize the time signatures nice and clearly, like this. Okay, let me find the, there we go. All right. So now, we don't want to change the way this is performed. We just want to make it clearer. Okay? The way this is beamed right now is very unclear because we see actually what appears to be three groups. We should see 4 beats. We should see 4 beats clearly. So what needs to happen here? Well, we need to group by beats, group by quarters. Here's a quarter, because there's 4 quarters. Here's a quarter. When does the next quarter fall? Well, it falls right here. When does the next quarter fall? It falls right here. And we want to beam this such that this is visible. So to do this, what would we do? Well, we would break the beam here. We certainly wouldn't have that beam there. Okay, so I'll just show you. I erase this beam. Of course, we're going to draw it out over here. Okay, like this. And then we know this is an 8th note because this is, beamed together already. Okay, so that's an 8th there. We would break the beam here. Now we can clearly see 4 quarters. See? So here's the original. Okay, and this is what we would notate. Quarter, 2/8, 2/8, 2/8. And for counting, that clearly gives us 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and nice and clear. Now let's take a look at the next measure. Next measure, okay, this time it's obscured a little differently. Let's find the quarters. To find the quarters here, we will need to think in 8ths because we have dotted quarters, which are equal to 3/8. So I'll just draw out all my quarters and my 8ths here. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So here are my 8ths. I'm going to go ahead and beam these, well, as I should, quarter notes in quarters. Okay. And then I'm going to simplify this so I can see that, okay, well, this first quarter note is already a quarter, so I can keep that a quarter. This is a dotted quarter. Okay, so, and there are going to be multiple solutions for these. So I could keep this as a dotted quarter, or I could turn these 2 into a quarter and then tie it to an 8th here. You see, here's another beat. I can tie these together like this because a quarter plus the 8th equals the dotted quarter. It's 3/8. And then these 2 8ths will simplify to a quarter. And I can notate it like that. So if I'm counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, now I can actually visualize where the beats fall. I've got beat 1 here. Beat 1 here, beat 2, beat 3, and beat 4. Nice and clear where my beats are. Okay, so again, this takes a little bit of thinking. So this would look like this. Quarter, quarter tied to an eighth. These eighths must be beamed together because they're part of beat 3, and this final eighth is tied to a quarter. I'm counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. This is a lot easier to read than the original notation. The original notation, you don't see where the beats are very clearly. Here, we can see the beats very clearly. They're beamed together. Okay, let's take another example, because I know that this is not the easiest thing to learn if you've not done it before. So number 2. Okay, same deal. Look at the time signature. We should see 3 half notes. 3 half notes. Well, we've got a half note here. That's good. Where's the next half note? Well, the half note is there. Well, that's not good because this beam is in the way. And the final half note is here. So that first part's easy because we just need to break that beam right there so that we have a half note here, a half note here, and a half note here beamed together. On the next measure, where's the half here? Well, there's a problem. This whole note's a problem, right? So a whole note can be represented by 4 quarters. So I'm going to think of this as 1, 2, 3, 4 quarters. Okay, instead, that are all tied together. Now I can see my halves. The first 2 quarters form this half. The next 2 quarters form this half. And the final 2 quarters form this half. And then I just need to identify where my ties fall. Okay. So to do this, one in particular, because it plays on beat 2 here, or the and of beat 1, since we're in 3/2 time, I need to write out this as a quarter. So in this one, I'm just going to do the second measure here. Okay. We have our first initial quarter, and the whole note needs to be represented by at least a quarter here. Whole note is 3 quarters worth. Okay, so this portion is my whole note, because 2 quarters plus 1/2 is 4 quarters, or whole note. Okay, and I'm writing it that way because, look, you've got a half note here. This is a half note. And then finally, we have a half note here. 3 half notes are displayed. The last thing to do is to add my ties. Well, this is a whole note, so it must be tied thusly. Now, it's clear to read. 1, 2, 3. We got 3 beats. Okay. This will take some practice. And yeah, so each of these work the same way. 9/8 time, we should see 3 groups of eighth notes. So eighth, 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 eighth. And then you just have to re-notate this to fit this time signature. Okay, so I'll do this. This will be my last example. I don't want to do it all for you. I want you to challenge yourselves as well. So if we do this here, final example, that means this quarter right here is perfectly fine. We can leave that as a quarter. But this needs to be an eighth. Here. And it needs to be an eighth that happens to be tied to another eighth, because this is this, but it's between a beam. This quarter is fine because it's within a beat, and this final dotted quarter is fine because it is all within a beat as well. So this is what you would write for this. And now we can see three groups. One group of 3/8 notes, the second group of 3/8 notes, and the final group of 3/8 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Anyways, that is how you're going to do this assignment. I know it's not the easiest one, but work carefully. If you need to do it a few times, you can. If you need to challenge yourselves with other things, you can as well. But good luck with this. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to post in the comment section, and I will try to get to those as soon as I can. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next video.